9 MPs quit the Labour Party this week, and there are rumours that more could follow, including potentially some Labour lords and councillors. So how should the party react? Well, joining us now is the Shadow International Trade Secretary, Gardiner. Thank you for being on the programme this morning. You listened to the Chukwuemeka interview, laying out his reasons for resigning from the Labour Party. How do you think Labour now needs to react to these 9 MPs leaving? Well,
look, I did listen to that interview very carefully, and I'm really confused because Chuck, on the one hand, says that over the past 2 years, things on Brexit have changed, the facts have changed, the context has changed, and therefore we need people to have a second vote on it. And yet, when it comes to his own constituency, where the facts have certainly changed, he's no longer a Labour Party member of Parliament, but an independent, he says that the people in his constituency don't have to have a new vote on it. So there's a real inconsistency there. But quite honestly, what I thought really came across most out of that particular interview was that here was somebody who had no great policy difference. It was all about personality. And when it came to that bit where you asked him about, did he want to become the leader of the party, it was fairly clear to me that, in effect, the reason that he wanted to leave the Labour Party was that he knew he could never be the leader of the Labour Party. And this is about personality. Let's focus in politics on policies. If you look at what's happened in the last week alone, and we see 3,500 jobs going in Honda under this government because of a trade deal that they concluded with Japan without thinking that if Japan was able to produce cars in Japan and import them into Europe without tariffs, then actually there may not be a point in them having those jobs in the UK, but they could re-import those jobs into Japan.
Now, we on the show, as you know, are very, very keen to talk about policy a lot of the time. Last week, we did a whole report on the car industry. This week, however...
It's more personality.
It is about personality, if you will forgive me. For this 1 week only, we are going to focus on Westminster, and you know that we hate doing that on this programme, but I just feel that this is the week, if any week, to actually look at it.
I'll answer your question.
Let's talk about the fact that you said earlier that Chukwuemeka should face a by-election, because he would argue that people vote for their MPs. It's something that Jeremy Corbyn himself tweeted in 2010. In our electoral system, you vote for your MP rather than a party leader. Yeah, he's right, isn't he?
Look, you do that, but you gave Chuka the perfect answer to that when you said, yes, well, that's the technicalities of it. Listen to what the people on the streets of Streatham were saying. They were saying, actually, they don't think that he would get back in if he were re-elected. And listen to what Heidi Allen, one of the Tory defectors, said. She herself said that the reason that they didn't want now to conduct by-elections was because they would be crushed. That was her words. So they know that if they went back to the electorate would not re-endorse them. But look, so the point is that they have left the Labour Party, and each one of those Labour MPs who left the Labour Party actually found that at the last election their votes went up enormously.
Well, not in Austin.
Indeed. I was talking about the ones who formed the independent group. Their votes went up enormously. And actually, they, as a result of the manifesto that we had, as a result of the campaign that Jeremy Corbyn won, and the manifesto that he put together, which is a radical, progressive manifesto. I know you don't want to talk about policies, but it was the policies that gave them the increase in their votes that most of them saw. So I really don't think it's right for them simply to say, oh, well, that had nothing to do with it. Most MPs recognise that, yes, of course, we're all egotistical enough to want to say, well, it's all down to me being such a wonderful person that my constituents elect me. But no, we stand on a manifesto. We stand on policies.
Now,
and the policies that Jeremy put forward were the ones that the people of this country actually said, yep, that meets the need.
One reason that many of the MPs gave for leaving the party was anti-Semitism. Yes. And we often talk about anti-Semitism in very general terms, but I just want to focus on a little bit on some of the things that Luciana Berger has said that she has experienced, because I think it is important to talk about what we're talking about here. This is a woman who lost over 100 members of her mother's family in the Holocaust, including someone as young as 4 years old. And she said that she's been called a traitor to her country, that she's a Mossad agent, she's a Zionist pig, her face has been imposed on a rat or on Nazi-inspired images. I mean, 6 people have been convicted of anti-Semitic hate crime and death threats against her. Now, it's important to say that some of these people are from the right, but some of them are from the left as well. Yeah. I mean, has Labour let her down?
Look, you will have heard the remarks that I made in Parliament on Wednesday. I have very little time for the others of that independent group, but actually, for Luciana, I was deeply saddened that she felt she had no alternative but to leave the party because of the racist, anti-Semitic abuse that she had suffered. But let's talk about what we in the party are doing about it and have been doing for the past 18 months, OK? Over that period, since the new General Secretary came in, 1,106 complaints have been lodged. 443 of those complaints were not about members of the Labour Party. Therefore, we could take no action about them. Of the remaining, 220 were found to have no evidence backing them up. OK? We then...
So there's no problem?
No. There is a problem. There is a problem, but I want to quantify that problem in terms of the complaints that have been made. You then had 146 of those, which were then taken to the first stage, and they were deemed to be people who had used a trope without realising how offensive it was, and they were given a warning. Okay? We then went on to people who actually left the party. There were 44 people who left the party before their case could be heard because they knew they were going to be expelled. We then expelled 12 people whose cases went to the final disciplinary stage in the party.
Has Labour done enough, do you think?
Look, we have changed the way in which we deal with these to deal with them faster. We weren't dealing with them fast enough. We have changed the way we're dealing with them to make sure that it's faster. And I want to make sure that the outcomes, not just the speed by which we process, but the outcomes are the right ones. But we have expelled now, or people have gone because they thought they were going to be expelled, 61 people from the party. Now,
should Jeremy Corbyn have met with
look
Luciana
at this. One more point, please, Sophie, if I may. And that is that if you look at this as a percentage of the Labour membership, remember we have almost 600,000 members of our party. If you look at it, it's 0.01% of our members who have been expelled, and even the totality of the complaints that we received, even those that had nothing backing them up, is 0.1%. So we're talking about a very tiny minority in the party that are causing huge distress by the appalling way in which they're behaving.
Should Jeremy Corbyn have met with Luciana Berger more recently than last year? I mean, this is a woman who is receiving some absolutely vile abuse.
Look, I don't know the details of meetings or anything like that. I've certainly met with Luciana. I've spoken to Luciana.
How recently?
Two weeks ago, just after the PLP meeting, actually, the Parliamentary Labour Party meeting. But that's not the issue here. The issue here is, is there a problem? Yes, there is. How large is that problem in terms of numbers? It's tiny. Are we dealing with it? We didn't deal with it fast enough, but we now are, and we're getting on top of it. And that's the assurance that I really want to give, because I want everybody, whether they're from a Jewish background, from any other faith background or any ethnicity, I want them to feel at home and secure in the Labour Party. And so does Jeremy.
Now, I want to just ask you about a tweet that you put out earlier this week, if I may. We should better show it on the wall. Now, this was in response to someone who suggested, you said the 7 MPs who quit Labour were forced out. You said, just to be clear, I did not talk about the 7 MPs. I was referring to Luciana Berger. I have absolutely no time for the others at all. What I don't understand is, if you acknowledge that Luciana Berger, if you understand her reasons for leaving the party over anti-Semitism, why don't you understand that some other people in Labour may feel so strongly about it that they want to stand with Jews like Luciana Berger? This is not just an issue for Jewish people, is it?
No, it's not. And that's why I am dedicated in the Labour Party to defeating the evil of anti-Semitism that has that hold, right? But I've no time for the others at all, because actually their reasons are varied but different. Many of them personal reasons, many of them
So you don't believe their worries about anti-Semitism? You think they're not being sincere?
No, but what I'm clear about is that I don't believe that that is the sole focus of why they've left the Labour Party, right?
OK. OK. And I also want to ask you about something Chukwuemeka said. He said this from the interview that I did with him earlier. He said, "I blame Jeremy Corbyn, but I do blame other people who have acted as bystanders. It's disgraceful that the shadow cabinet has not done more, has not been more vocal, has not threatened to resign over what's been going on over anti-Semitism." I mean, are you a bystander, according to Chukwuemeka?
I think anybody who knows what I've been doing within the party, within the shadow cabinet, knows I'm not a bystander.
OK. Now, I'm keen to talk about Brexit, moving on to policies. Thank you very much for talking to me about anti-Semitism and about the split. Now, pressure is building on the Labour Party to back a referendum. So I'm just trying to get my head around what the latest policy is. Is the policy to have an election, for a Labour government to renegotiate a deal and then to put that deal back to the British people? Is that the policy?
Well, look, it certainly was our policy. We're running out of time is the obvious riposte to that. So you're right in articulating that had it all been within our hands, had we been able to programme it as we wanted, what we would have done is said, the deal doesn't match up, we need a general election. We would then have a general election. We would have conducted negotiations. And I think the interesting thing is that you saw this last week when Jeremy went to Brussels, the way in which the proposals that he had given to Theresa May, the 5 proposals that we'd put in that letter, that actually gained real traction in Brussels. And they said, look, on this basis, it would be possible to have a better future political relationships, the future political agreement that still needs to be negotiated, not the withdrawal agreement, but the future political agreement, could be changed on the basis of that offer. Now, that's why we made it, because we believe that it's not right to offer the people of this country a false prospectus between no deal and her deal, remembering that her deal lost by the largest margin any government has ever lost a debate in 1,000 years of Parliament's history. So, you know, given that that's where we are with this, it's ridiculous that we're going on and she is trying to wind down the clock so that she can still say, well, you've now got to vote for the deal that even most of my own party didn't want, because the alternative is no deal.
It's interesting what you were saying at the beginning, that the clock's running down. It certainly is. Realistically, do you think a second referendum is going to happen?
I think it's... Look, we've always said, since the composite motion at party conference, that we would not exclude a second referendum, precisely because we cannot risk no deal. The closer we get to no deal, the more important that safety net of a second referendum comes. And what I think we're seeing in this coming week is the movement towards that as that safety net against no deal. But what we want to do in the party is not have that to be a false position, which is instead of it being her deal or no deal, it's her deal or a second referendum, or her deal in a second referendum versus Remain. If we're going to the people, it has to be on a real choice of something that is credible. Her deal is not credible, and that's why we put forward our proposals. That's why, given how they've been received in Europe, we believe there is the possibility of a consensus in Parliament around that, which then, yes, could be put to the people in a public vote. And I think, actually, if you remember back to a couple of times ago when I was on your programme, I think I said something quite similar then.
You did.
As being my personal view at that stage. I don't know whether we'll get there. We've still got to decide the amendments that are going to be put down. And, of course, there's been a helpful amendment from Phil Wilson and Peter Kyle. But actually, unfortunately, that would mean focusing on support for the Prime Minister's deal. So there's talks going on with them. I hope we'll find a way through.
Barry Gardiner, we're out of time. Thank you very much. Now, in the last few moments, the Labour Party press office has been in touch, responding to an allegation made by Chukran Muna in my interview with him earlier in the show. He said that Jeremy Corbyn said Jewish people have no sense of irony, and the Labour Party wish to make it clear they dispute this allegation, and they say that Jeremy Corbyn was referring to two specific individuals, not Jewish people as a whole.